So how do you sell to an investor? What I tell CEOs is the more you sell, the worse it is. And they look at me kind of strange. And the basis for that is they don't understand that this is a picture of your investor. It's a crocodile. It's not a normal person. And the more you sell to the crocodile, the worse it's going to be. This is fundamentally different from the way most CEOs think. They think they need to sell their product. Why is that? Well, first of all, you've invented the product, or you are you're really bought into it, and your customers like it, and they're paying for it. And so it's logical for you to think that the investor is going to be interested in your product and you should be selling it. Well, the sad truth is that most investors are not really interested in your product. Of the 18 companies that I invested in Shepherd Ventures, I don't use any of them. That doesn't mean that I dislike the product, but the product or service is a vehicle for me to make money. And so it's a mistake for you to think that selling the product initially to the investor is going to work. So there's a process that we call two-brain selling. And everybody has a couple of brains. Actually, there are three different brains, but I'm just going to talk about two brains. There's the reptile or the croc brain and the neocortex. And let's take a look at what we call two-brain selling. There's a PowerPoint that's available to you. This slide is available, and you can see that the CEO has two brains, the red brain, which is the croc brain, and the neocortex. And if you're the CEO and you're selling to the investor on this side, you are in a logical mode. You're selling out of your neocortex, and you think, and rightly so, you think that the investor is paying attention to you and receiving your message in the neocortex. Initially, that's wrong. What's happening is that your message is being short-circuited to the investor's croc brain. The croc brain is a primitive brain, and it doesn't do much logic. It's pretty lazy and only has really two functions: to determine whether or not you're a danger. If you're dangerous, then the croc brain is going to reject you, and to figure out whether you're desirable. Are you interesting? Is what you have exciting? If you are considered safe and exciting, then what happens is the red brain, the croc brain, passes a message up, which on this slide is the little blue arrows, to the neocortex, and it creates a deep-seated desire to say yes. And so after initial processing by the croc brain, if it passes the message up to the neocortex, then the job of the investor is to figure out a reason to say yes. I call this the shiny object syndrome. When I was in college, I was on scholarships, I took loans, I had to work a couple of jobs, and I really didn't have any money, but I saw a shiny object that I had to have. It was a red Alfa Romeo convertible sports car. And I knew I couldn't afford it, but it was a shiny object, and my reptile brain said to my neocortex, George, you got to have this. And so I bought it, and I had a great time with it. But 6 months later, when it came time to pay the insurance, I couldn't afford it, so I sold the car. Our job here at Boot Camp is to teach you how to sell to the croc brain. We want to turn you into a shiny object so that you are irresistible to the investor, like the red sports car was to me. The alternative, which happens most of the time, is that you present a boring message, or you're not considered safe for some reason, and then there's no signal sent by the reptile brain to the neocortex, and eventually you keep selling your service or your product, and eventually the investor's neocortex wakes up and there's no deep-seated desire. There's no shiny object syndrome. And so the neocortex job at this point is to figure out a reason to say no. And there's always 100 reasons to say no. What you have to remember, if an investor says yes, it's a lot of work, because then you have to begin due diligence. And if it's a venture capitalist, that can take weeks and be expensive. And if it's a high net worth angel, they also have a long process to determine whether or not they should invest in you. And so what we teach you at boot camp is how to sell trust and excitement, not your product initially. You want to sell to the croc brain, not to the neocortex. Now, eventually, you are going to have to sell your service and product when the neocortex wakes up. They're going to want to know about your product, but you need to get that deep-seated desire by passing through the croc brain, and that's what we teach here at boot camp.